I didn't make any money last month, did I? The village asked me to pay for health insurance, which is 380 yuan, but I still haven't paid yet. I've been unable to find any work, whether it's manual labor, hauling trash, or any other job. I'm willing to do anything with daily wages ranging from 100 to over 200 yuan. I'm not picky about jobs at all. Due to the scarcity of jobs and the high number of workers, conflicts and fights break out among migrant workers vying for work.
整体感觉现在这生活，您觉得幸福吗？幸福个屁呀
！This 50-year-old man can't find a job in Beijing and can't afford the 300 yuan of health insurance. My pension is only 150 yuan a month, which isn't enough to get by. Just over 100 yuan is simply not enough.
It's very hard being old. No one wants to hire you for work.
At 4 a.m. in Beijing, long before dawn, hundreds, sometimes even over 10,000 people gather on the empty ground opposite Jinma shopping mall at Majuqiao Commercial Street. They are there in search of work. This crowd includes young men in their early 20s and older people bearing the marks of hard lives. All of them keep a close eye on the passing vehicles, particularly the closed trucks that are slowing down, hoping to find employment. When the truck stops, dozens of people quickly surround it, eagerly asking if there is any work available and what type it might be. Often, only a few are selected, leaving many to miss out on the morning's recruitment and have to wait for another day. I found work as a security guard at a fair in the temple today, where I can earn 200 yuan for a 9-hour day, including a meal. My job was to stop passing vehicles. The advantage of day jobs is experiencing different roles. I've done all sorts of day jobs in Majuqiao, generally speaking. I've done the hardest labor, endured the hardest scolding, and earned the least money. After 3 months in Majuqiao, I've worked a lot but saved nothing, even losing money every month, despite the early mornings and late nights. I'm physically and mentally exhausted but feel powerless to change my situation. When the new year was approaching, a young woman from out of town with no money for a place sleeps on the floor in a basement of a building. It's not that she isn't scared, she just has no choice. A security guard in Fengtai district found her during a night patrol. This is too dangerous. Aren't you afraid of being here at midnight?
I'm not afraid.
Where is your home?
Suzhou.
My, it's not easy at all. You're here all by yourself, right? Amid a persistent downturn in China's economy and soaring unemployment rates, young individuals unable to secure employment in their hometowns are migrating to the capital of Beijing in search of job opportunities. This has given rise to the phenomenon known as the Beijing drifters, a term for those who perennially wander within Beijing for work. Many among them, unable to afford the city's exorbitant rental prices, find themselves relegated to living in basements. The living conditions of these young women in basements are quite disheartening. In Beijing's basements, washing facilities and kitchens are often shared among several occupants, contributing to an environment that is both dirty and chaotic. The cramped rooms, barely large enough to fit a single bed, can feel suffocating and may lead to depression if occupied for extended periods. The lack of ventilation in these basements means that clothes hung indoors can fill the air with a musty smell. Therefore, clothing can only be hung in the corridor. Once they're dry, they have to be taken back immediately. Otherwise, there's a high chance they'll get stolen.
I'm a recent university graduate who has rented a 3-square-meter room with utilities in Beijing for 650 yuan a month. After seeing many apartments and experiencing basement group rentals, this is the most satisfactory for a rural girl who came to the big city on her own. No money, no connections, nobody to pay your rent, and nobody to listen to your complaints.
In recent years, due to economic downturns, it has become increasingly difficult for the drifting population to find work, making their living conditions even worse. A recent video titled "How Does the Most Frugal Person in Beijing Live?" has resonated online, highlighting the living conditions of Beijing's lower class. Some, to save on rent, have resorted to living in their cars long term. The video featured gang leader Li, real name Li Hua, who has lived and worked in Beijing for nearly 20 years. His life has had its moments of glory. After his business failed 5 years ago, he found himself stranded in Majuqiao area, now doing day jobs. In 2023, he saved 25,000 yuan to buy a second-hand car, beginning a dignified nomadic life. Dressed in a white down jacket, and despite his vagabond status, he doesn't look destitute. Although unable to afford monthly rent of around 1,000 yuan, he can still brew a cup of tea, light a cigarette, enjoy the scenery, and find peace in reading. Li is compiling a guide for free accommodations in Beijing during the winter, a strategy he believes many could benefit from, emphasizing you don't know how tough it can be when you're at your poorest. In Beijing, for those starting from scratch yet still aiming to save and earn money, Majuqiao is the place to be. Majuqiao is unique in Beijing for offering rental accommodations without a deposit, charging only 450 yuan per month. It offers an accessible opportunity for young people to earn over 200 yuan daily. It's also where they can find Beijing's last 5 yuan meal that's enough to fill them up. Li advises against long-term jobs, recounting a story of someone from Xingtai, Hebei, who was promised 3,000 yuan a month but received only a little over 2,000 yuan after 2 months. Day jobs are more stable and less likely to involve deceit. At worst, one might lose just a day's earnings. So he recommends avoiding long-term employment due to the high risk of not getting paid. He observes that people have become more aware and are reluctant to endure excessive exploitation, yet they find themselves with few better alternatives. In pursuit of freedom, this is their only option, and what they gain is only the most basic form of freedom. At the same time, he has taken to social media platforms to share his daily life and the real-life experiences of others living in urban villages. Li recounted meeting an older man while working in loading and unloading. This man had previously owned a coal mine and possessed assets worth 100 million yuan, all of which were lost, leaving him with no choice but to engage in the same labor as the rest. Initially, he arrived in a sedan packed with belongings such as a quilt and a rice cooker. Distinguishing himself from others carrying himself like a boss he once was. During their stay in the dormitory, he complained about the dirtiness and odors. By the second meeting, his car was still there, but with fewer possessions inside. When they met again, he had sold his car, leaving only a suitcase behind. This narrative is among numerous examples demonstrating that, for many, engaging in day labor emerges as the sole feasible means of earning a livelihood. This video has been removed from some platforms in China. In the vast community of day laborers in Majuqiao, a significant portion are older workers. Employers often hesitate to hire them due to concerns about their age and potential accidents. Additionally, considering the heavy workload and safety hazards, many regions in the construction industry have issued retirement orders for older workers. These orders prohibit men over the age of 60 and women over the age of 50 from engaging in construction work. This further exacerbates the employment challenges for older day laborers. Miss Liu, who is 60 years old and has been drifting in Beijing for over 20 years, recently shared her work experiences with reporters. In her early years, Miss Liu would stand by the road on Haizi corner in Daxing district at 4 in the morning, looking for day labor. Security guards would scatter and douse them with water to prevent gathering. She noted, "They drenched us with water in the dead of winter." Miss Liu also said, "At that time, I also did day labor and got paid the same day. There were all kinds of tasks available, such as working on the construction of Dashing Airport, repairing the subway, laying subway pipelines, road construction, and working at construction sites. There was also planting flowers, where we would punch holes in a large wall with iron pipes and plant flowers inside. It was all for show. Whenever it was National Day, May Day, and the party's birthday, they would do this. One large wall of flowers costs over 700,000 yuan, but it's just a superficial project, a formality for the town government to make money. Now, this kind of work is no longer feasible. The government doesn't have the funds anymore. Nowadays, the government is just an empty shell, like a sick mulberry tree. It may look fine on the outside, but it's hollow inside." Throughout the 3-year span of the pandemic, Miss Liu remained away from home, dedicating her time to working as a caregiver in a Beijing hospital instead. She cared for a 93-year-old patient who would cry out all night, making it impossible for her to sleep. The money was hardly worth the effort. It was exhausting. Miss Liu mentioned that Majuqiao has now become a key spot for day laborers in Beijing. "You wouldn't believe it, but once someone starts doing this casual labor, including my old man, they don't want to do anything else. It's all about freedom. You can take a break whenever you're tired and get back to it when you feel like working again. But now it's hard to even find these casual jobs. Even the young people in their 30s and 40s who used to go out to work in Beijing are now adopting a lying flat attitude. What can they do when there's no work available?" Overall, working conditions are not as good as before. We used to start at 200 yuan a day, going up to 300 or 400 yuan. Now, wages have dropped to around 170 yuan, and even 200 yuan day jobs are hard to find. There are highly educated young people looking for day jobs too, with PhDs delivering packages and master's graduates working as security guards. Isn't this a societal issue? Society isn't utilizing its talent. It's all about who has power and whose children continue to hold office. A man born in a rural area near Xi'an came to the city at the age of 68 to work as a day laborer. Kang Gun-chang lived with his wife in a rental less than 10 square meters. He keeps his daily expenses under 10 yuan, resorting to instant noodles when hungry, leading a very frugal life. Finding day labor is a significant challenge for Kang, who often gets rejected due to his age. He spends his days walking through noisy crowds and asking for work opportunities from morning till night. Sometimes he's still seeking jobs at as late as 9 p.m., cherishing even a night shift cleaning job. At an age when many enjoy retirement, Kang's biggest wish is to work more while he can and earn a bit more money. Many, after facing unsuccessful wage disputes, have ended up settling in Majuqiao. At 61 years old, Zhang Jun worked as a tile worker in Dalian and the southern part of Jiangsu when he was younger. Later on, he made his way to Majuqiao to make a living and stayed there for a whole decade. Compared to day labor, being a tile worker is more stable, where they at least don't have to worry too much about not having work the next day. So why do Zhang Jun still prefer casual jobs? Recalling times of unpaid wages, he expresses frustration after working a whole year. Asking for pay felt like begging. During regular days, despite hard work, the contractor often deducts wages or delays payments for various reasons. Every time when asking for wages, one must speak humbly and observe their boss's mood. Excuses like, "We haven't received the payment yet," or "There's nothing I can do about it," are casually used to dismiss Zhang Jun. Unpaid. Zhang Jun's efforts for half the year were in vain. Non-payment has become common, and Zhang Jun, tired of the lack of income and security, sees day labor as his last stand against social injustice. In the lower strata of Chinese society, thousands continue to live in dire conditions. Prominent human rights lawyer Chen Guangcheng posted on X, questioning why people are moving to Beijing to become part of the drifters or heading south to Guangdong and Shenzhen. He pointed out that people are forced to wander and seek employment opportunities for survival. Chen Guangcheng stated that on the surface, it appears to be a choice to drift, but in reality, it reflects a misallocation of social resources. He questions why people would prefer to live in their vehicles in Beijing rather than in their rural homes. The reason, according to him, lies in the disproportionate allocation of resources by the Chinese Communist Party since it seized power. This disparity in investment has led to extremely uneven development across Chinese society, with a growing economic gap between regions. Large cities offer employment and development opportunities that some poor areas simply cannot match. A young woman recently highlighted this dilemma in a video saying,
"Places with jobs have no home for me, and places with my home offer no jobs. Foreign lands cannot accommodate my soul, and my homeland cannot accommodate my body. Hence begins a life of drifting. Who would choose to be drifting if they have the choice to settle down?"
This, Chen remarks, is the peculiar state of China. Beijing's permanent resident population has declined for 6 consecutive years. According to the latest official report, in 2022, Beijing's permanent population was 21.8 million. Among these, 8.25 million were migrant residents, some living in basements, air raid shelters, rural areas on the city outskirts, abandoned ships, or even under bridges, streets, and public toilets. Earlier reports estimated that Beijing's 5,500 basements housed about 1 million of these drifters, who are also referred to as the low-end population surviving in the corners of the city. One issue that all residents in Beijing have in common, whether locals or drifters, is that they deeply resent the Beijing government's obsession with reducing the population size. It remains difficult for the public to understand the rationale behind this peculiar notion from the CCP government. In today's China, where power and wealth are closely intertwined, government agencies and state-owned enterprise headquarters, which control a vast amount of social resources, are all concentrated in Beijing. As a result, Beijing is not only a center for political power, but also a center of wealth. Against this social backdrop, the idea of stripping away Beijing's economic functions to transform it into a purely political capital is so absurd that it leaves people at a loss for words. The origin of Beijing's campaign to clear out the low-end population traces back to a fire incident on November 18, 2017, in Daxing District, where a fire in an old residential building resulted in 19 deaths and 8 injuries. Following this, Beijing quickly launched a special cleanup campaign with hundreds of thousands of people driven out of Beijing without resettlement, compensation, or reparations. The official stance claims the goal was to enhance social security, maintain order, and balance urban capacity. The actual practice involved shutting down old warehouses, factories, or rental apartments, cutting off water and electricity, and setting deadlines for moving out, prohibiting migrants from staying overnight. Those wishing to remain faced forced eviction or even administrative detention by the government. The policy primarily impacted the drifters and various grassroots workers, such as construction workers, cleaners, and food delivery riders, among others. Some government documents referred to them as low-end population, denoting those with low education and income. However, many of these people turned to city work because of poor agricultural prospects in their hometowns or even because their land was confiscated by the government. It's not necessarily that they can earn more money in the cities. For some, staying in rural areas might mean facing a real threat to their survival. Some people believe that despite official claims of enhancing urban safety, the real objective might be to elevate Beijing's image as a high-end metropolis. This would potentially create more room for the development of high-tech industries. To them, The so-called low-end population does not fit into the picturesque vision of prosperity and flourishing that the Xi Jinping administration aims to promote. A high-ranking official within the CCP revealed that a key reason for the removal of the so-called low-end population is the economic crisis emerging in many parts of China. Signs of social instability have already appeared in various places. To prepare for potential challenges, including the possibility of foreign embargoes on food and grain, the Chinese government has conducted simulations to explore responses to such scenarios. Furthermore, the government is concerned about how to handle potential unrest among this segment of the population if the economic crisis worsens. Could these individuals be controlled or forced out if necessary? The actions taken in Beijing, therefore, might be seen as a form of practice or a demonstration for the rest of the country on how to deploy law enforcement and potentially the military to manage or suppress the population during an economic downturn. This initiative is likely not just about ensuring safety after a fire incident in Daxing district, but is more broadly about maintaining the political stability of the regime, which is seen by the CCP as essential for the country's overall stability.